Something happened this morning that every single person on this planet needs to understand, because it doesn't just affect oil prices or military strategy. It affects the price of your groceries, the cost of your gas, and whether the global economy tips into recession before summer. At 6:42 this morning, the United States military confirmed it had destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels operating near the Strait of Hormuz. Not drone boats, not patrol ships, mine-laying vessels, ships specifically designed to place explosive devices in the water that would detonate when tankers pass over them. And here is the part the headline version leaves out entirely. According to U.S. naval intelligence intercepts cited by Reuters this morning, Iran had already successfully laid an undisclosed number of mines in the strait before those ships were destroyed. The mines are still there, and as of this broadcast, no oil tanker, not a single one, has successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz in the last 6 days. Zeroed from 37 tankers per day to 0 in 11 days. I've been tracking every document, every filing, every intelligence report since Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th. The picture that emerges when you read the actual data, not the White House press releases, not the Pentagon briefings, is far more alarming than anything you've seen on the evening news. Let me show you exactly what's happening, why the administration's response has been riddled with false claims, and what this collapse of the world's most important shipping lane actually means for you, your money, and your food. Before we go deeper into the mine situation, the real state of U.S. naval capability in the Strait, and the economic numbers that should be dominating every headline right now, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. This story is moving faster than any I've covered. See? And the next 72 hours will determine whether this becomes a full-scale global energy catastrophe or whether diplomatic channels find a way to reopen the waterway. Hit subscribe, notifications on. You'll want to be here when it breaks. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide channel of water between Iran and Oman. It sounds small, it isn't. Every single day, approximately 20 million barrels of crude oil and liquefied natural gas pass through that strait. That number represents roughly 20% of the entire world's daily energy consumption, transported through a stretch of water narrow enough that you could theoretically see across it on a clear day. Saudi Arabia's oil goes through it. Kuwait's oil goes through it. The UAE's oil goes through it. Qatar's LNG, the natural gas that heats homes across Europe and Asia, goes through it. The Strait of Hormuz is not just important. It is, by any objective measure, the single most economically critical piece of ocean on the planet. Iran has known this for decades. Iranian military doctrine has long included what strategists call the Hormuz card. The ability to threaten or disrupt the strait is Iran's single most powerful economic weapon. Not its nuclear program, not its missile arsenal. The strait. And as of March 2, 2026, Iran played that card for the first time in history, with full operational effect. February 28th, Operation Epic Fury begins. The U.S. and Israeli forces launch coordinated strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities, missile infrastructure, and military leadership. The Natanz nuclear facility is hit, Fordo is hit. Revolutionary Guard command centers are destroyed. The operation is the most significant military action in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq invasion. March 1st, the first domino falls. The oil tanker Skylight is struck by a projectile north of the Strait of Hormuz while transiting toward the Gulf. The crew is unharmed, the ship is not. It becomes the first of 5 commercial vessels to be attacked in the opening days of the conflict. March 2nd. This is the moment everything changes. A senior IRGC official goes on Iranian state television and makes an announcement that sends shockwaves through global energy markets. Quote, "The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Any vessel attempting to transit will be targeted. This is not a threat, it is a declaration. For the first time since the strait became the world's critical oil artery, Iran formally declared it closed to commercial shipping. Within 4 hours, maritime traffic has dropped 80%. Insurance companies begin refusing coverage for Gulf voyages entirely. March 3rd, supertankers, the enormous vessels that carry 2 million barrels of crude each, begin abandoning planned Gulf voyages. According to Bloomberg Intelligence, at least 14 supertanker operators redirect their routes away from the Persian Gulf within a 24-hour window. The world's largest moving objects, ships that don't turn quickly under any circumstances, suddenly reverse course. March 5th, Reuters publishes the number that defines the crisis. Daily tanker transits through the Strait of Hormuz. 0 not reduced, not limited. 0 down from 37 on February 27th, the day before the operation began. The world's most important waterway has effectively stopped functioning. And here is the detail Fortune magazine captures in its analysis from that day. Iran achieved this not through a declared military blockade requiring a naval fleet. Iran achieved it through fear. 5 tankers struck. 16 mine-laying ships operating in the lane. Insurance companies walking away, that was enough. That is the setup. Now the documents. I pulled the CSIS analysis published 3 days ago. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, arguably the most respected defense think tank in Washington. Page 4. Direct quote. Traffic estimates based on ship tracking data indicate that Iran has so far been largely successful in shutting down traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Critically, this includes Chinese-flagged vessels. No one, not even Beijing, is getting through. Read that again. Not even Beijing. China depends on Middle Eastern oil for 40% of its energy supply. China has a strategic partnership with Iran. China was reportedly pre-briefed about this conflict before the public announcement, and even China cannot get its tankers through the strait right now. When the country with the most incentive and the most political cover to defy the blockade is staying away, that tells you everything about how dangerous those waters have become. But here is what got me. Page 7 of the same CSIS document. Quote, the U.S. Navy's current posture in the Gulf does not support sustained escort operations for commercial vessels. The combination of Iranian mine threat, missile capability, and drone swarm tactics creates a threat environment that would require dedicated minesweeping operations, sustained aerial coverage, and significant surface vessel commitment before commercial transit becomes viable under escort protection. That's not my interpretation, that is CSIS. Put those together. The world's most important oil lane is shut down. 37 tankers a day. That was the number passing through the Strait of Hormuz before March 2nd today. 0. For 11 straight days, the world's most important waterway has been effectively shut down. And what's happening right now could affect your gas prices, your grocery bills, and your retirement account, whether you're paying attention or not. First, let's understand what we're actually talking about. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile wide waterway between Iran and Oman, just 21 miles. And through that single choke point flows roughly 20% of the world's entire oil supply. There is no alternative route, no bypass, no backup plan. It is the single most important body of water in the global economy, and right now it's closed. This didn't happen overnight. 4 months ago, classified U.S. intelligence assessments warned that Iran had pre-positioned mines and attack boats in the southern Gulf, anticipating possible American military action. 6 weeks ago, Lloyd's of London quietly raised war risk premiums for Gulf voyages by 300%. Major supertanker operators canceled forward bookings for March and April, before the war even started. They saw it coming. Then Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th. Within 72 hours, Iran declared the strait closed, and the crisis that analysts had been quietly preparing for became the reality the rest of the world woke up to. The immediate impact everyone is covering is oil. Before the conflict, Brent crude was trading at $87 a barrel. It briefly hit $120 before settling near $110. That 26% increase translates to roughly 60 to 70 cents more per gallon at the pump within weeks. If crude stays above $100 for the next 30 days, Goldman Sachs projects U.S. retail gas prices reaching $4.50 to $5 nationally. That's real money for real people. But here's the story most outlets are missing entirely. And it's actually more alarming than the oil headlines. Half of the world's urea, the primary nitrogen fertilizer that grows the food you eat, passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Qatar is one of the world's largest producers of nitrogen-based fertilizers. Those shipping lanes run directly through the strait. And right now, none of that fertilizer is moving. The planting season in South and Southeast Asia begins in 6 to 8 weeks. If fertilizer doesn't reach those markets in the next 3 weeks, crop yields for the entire 2026 season will fall significantly. Wheat, corn, rice, the staple crops that feed billions of people, all facing a supply shock. Fertilizer prices are already up 28% in 11 days. Your grocery store will feel it by late 2026. That story has received far less attention than the oil price headlines. It deserves significantly more. Then there's the mine situation. And this is the part that changes everything. Iran laid mines in the strait. The U.S. Navy destroyed 16 mine-laying vessels to degrade that capability. But the mines those ships already deployed are still in the water. And here's what makes this so serious. Naval escorts solve the missile and drone threat. They do not solve the mine threat. These are fundamentally different problems. Mine clearing requires specialized ships, specialized training, and weeks of patient, dangerous work. Even if Iran agreed to a ceasefire today, reopening the strait to commercial traffic would still require weeks of clearing operations. The U.S. Navy's dedicated mine countermeasures capability in the Gulf has atrophied significantly over the past decade. The last dedicated U.S. minesweeper fleet in the Gulf was downsized in 2019. That is not a talking point. That is naval doctrine. Now let's talk about the credibility gap, because this became its own story. On March 10th, Energy Secretary Chris Wright posted on social media that the U.S. Navy had successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. The post went viral. Oil markets moved. Brent crude dropped $4 a barrel within 15 minutes. Headlines appeared across major networks. And then within 2 hours, the White House said 4 words. That is not true. The Navy confirmed directly. No escort had occurred. No tanker had transited. The post was deleted, and a staffer was reportedly involved. The Energy Secretary of the United States shared inaccurate information about an important global economic question, which affected markets, and the explanation given was that a staffer was responsible. Markets, which operate on information and trust, are now pricing in not just the disruption, but also the uncertainty about the administration's understanding of the situation. To be fair, there are other perspectives. Some analysts say the economic disruption is temporary, and that strategic objectives may justify short-term challenges. Certain nuclear and missile facilities in the region have been affected. Some officials have stated that a short-term increase in oil prices may be an acceptable trade-off for long-term strategic outcomes. You can agree or disagree with that perspective, but it is one that is being discussed seriously. Analysts who follow the military objectives still note that the situation in the region is complex and requires careful attention. Even when supporters describe Iran as acting cautiously, rather than desperately, it is a reminder of the delicate situation rather than a dismissal. Here's where the numbers stand right now. Iraq's oil production has decreased by about 70%, from 4.3 million barrels per day to 1.3 million. The Iraqi government relies heavily on oil revenue, which could create financial pressure within weeks. The S&P 500 is down 7.3% since February 28th. Airlines are down 22%. If you hold a diversified retirement portfolio, you may have already experienced some effects. Former Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen stated that every economic model she runs for a sustained Hormuz closure beyond 3 weeks shows U.S. recession probability exceeding 65%. That is not partisan framing. That is economic modeling from someone who has run these scenarios inside government. The bottom line is this. The numbers are not ambiguous. 37 tankers a day to zero. Oil up 35%, Iraq's production down 70%. Fertilizer prices up 28%. Mines in the water with no confirmed clearing timeline. A false statement from a cabinet secretary deleted within 2 hours. A Navy that says escorts are not yet possible. These are the documented operational facts of the most consequential energy crisis in half a century. Whether this resolves quickly through diplomatic channels or extends into weeks of mine clearing and sustained economic disruption, that difference is no longer primarily military. The mines are in the water, the strait is closed, and the next move has to be diplomatic, intelligence-driven, and logistical. The window is open, but it is closing.